Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's little lunch online. I'd firstly like to acknowledge country that all of us are meeting on today and hand over for a welcome from Lyndon Davis.
Yo ay, wanya, wanya ngalam janango, wanya yan yaran gan. Kari nina nami jojo mo birono, kayan man murangay jagun gun ganyon go, biriana naju barnji jimi, chakan baran no juno, jundul goji. Wanya ngalam. Hello, sorry about that. Just talking a bit of language there for the translator. Sorry, but just to translate basically what I was talking about there, I was just saying, welcome to everybody. Wanya is the word for welcome in the Gubbi Gubbi language, and welcome all the good spirits, female and male, and welcome all the good people. Uh, ancestors. My ancestors walked this land for countless generations, looking after the land and following the seasons. And I'm just grateful to be able to speak on their behalf and to use the ancient language of this ancient landscape, Gubbi Gubbi language. And my family, Malula clan, Maruchi clan, and people know Malula Bar, talks about the red belly black snake, and Maroochydore is a representation of the black swan. And so that's who we sort of speak on behalf of as well, and represent this landscape. And just honoured to be living on the landscape in which my ancestors looked after for so long. And now we are here, and it's our job to continue on the custodianship and into the next generations. And so, I feel like our ancestors would want everybody to know about this place and landscape that they live on. Then they could, do a really good job of taking care of it for the next generations. Our ancestors, great custodians, and the evidence is there in all the flora and fauna that we see around us today. And so, on behalf of those families, Wanyangala, meaning welcome everyone to our country, which is Janangu. And on behalf of the families, thank you very much there. I don't know what more to say there, but just a big welcome on behalf of the families, and enjoy the rest of your day. Wanya.
Thank you, Lyndon. Um, my name's Katie Edmiston. I should introduce myself first, I suppose. Welcome to today's little lunch, which is being brought to you by our friends and colleagues, Arts Front. Um, little lunch is 60 minutes and is being recorded and streamed live. It will be available for viewing afterwards on the Little Lunch Online website, which is www.llol.com.au. You're invited to introduce yourself in the Zoom chat and say where you are today and whose country you're on. You can also add any questions or comments. We do ask that people keep your mic muted when you're not speaking, and you can click on the captions button to access live closed captions also. There are Ausline signing. Thank you for those who are doing that today. Um, and so, who am I and why am I here? As I said, my name is Katie Edmiston, and I work for an organisation called Creative Arts Alliance. We are the regional arts services organisation for South East Queensland North, which means that I get to work across 6 local government areas: Gympie, Noosa, Sunshine Coast, Moreton Bay, Somerset and Redlands. And those are the traditional countries of the Gubbi Gubbi, Cubbi Cubbi people, Jinnaburra people, Butchulla people, Waka Waka people, Turrbal and Yagara people, and Quandamooka peoples. I'm really fortunate to work across all of those communities. We've got some fantastic speakers lined up with us today. And I might just do a little shout out to them first, and you guys could wave and say hello. So joining us from Woodford, we have Amanda. Joining us from Horizon, we have Lynne. And joining us from Yonder, we have Lincoln. So we might just get started, I guess. I can start asking you all my little questions. Hopefully the dogs won't bark too loudly in the background. Um, so firstly, I just wanted to probably ask all of you to tell us a little bit about your festival. For those who don't know, where are you based? What are you working on? And give us a little snapshot of the impacts that have been felt as a result of COVID. I probably should have set the theme for today. That was terrible of me not to start. We're talking about festivals in conversation and the impacts of COVID, and the different approaches people are trialing currently and the future of our festivals and events moving forward. So, a bloody great panel and a great conversation to be having now. So, I might just flick around to all of you to give your advice, your intro to yourself and a bit about you and the festival that you work on. Amanda, can we start with you, please?
Yes, thanks, Katie. So Amanda Jakes, I work on the Woodford Folk Festival, the Planting Festival, Artisan Camp, and Festival of Small Halls. Also this year we were doing a Year of Scotland in Australia national tour. As with most of us in this session, our forward year looked drastically different in March. We had to cancel 4 national tours, all of the Festival of Small Halls tours. We were touring both in New South Wales and Victoria at the time. We had to cancel the planting as well, of which all of them we'd had tickets being sold for and planning well underway. So refunded all tickets and worked to put the organisation into a holding pattern until we could see what the end of the year was going to look like. Unfortunately, that did mean a lot of contracts that were cancelled and redundancies. We're fortunate that we've been able to put 18 core staff onto JobKeeper to be able to get through this initial period and also to start thinking about what the year might look like in the second part of the year. So it's been a pretty big change. Woodford Folk Festival is held on Jinnaburra country up in the Moreton Bay region in the Sunshine Coast hinterland. And it's a 500-acre site which has been developed specifically for large-scale festivals and events. It has all of its own closed-loop systems on it. And last year we built Australia's largest recreational swimming lake, and it's called Lake Goola. And Lake Goola is named after Uncle Noel, who's our spokesperson for the Jinnaburra people at Woodfordia. And Uncle Noel, when he was a child, he's a very cuddly man, and he was given the nickname Koala, and Goola means koala. So that's Lake Goola, something that we're pretty proud to have achieved last year. I'll hold it for there now, Katie, and talk about the future when you get to the other questions.
Thanks so much, Amanda. And over to you, Lynne. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and where you're joining us from today and what's the festival that you're currently working on?
Thanks, Katie. I'd just like to acknowledge that I'm calling from Yagara and Turrbal lands today here in Brisbane, but of course I'm privileged enough to work on the Sunshine Coast on the lands of the Kabi Kabi and Jinnaburra peoples. And I'd like to pay my respect to elders past, present and future. The Horizon Festival, which I stepped into the role of artistic director of in October last year, is a relative newcomer to the festival circuit. We are now 5 years old, or 5 years young, however you want to look at it. And we usually run for 10 days, usually at the end of August and the beginning of September. And we are a festival that's housed in out of the Sunshine Coast Council, which has been an incredible blessing for us this year. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. And we were begun essentially as a placemaking exercise and a way to significantly contribute to the rich cultural ecosystem that we collectively are working to grow in this region together. So the second part of the question, how has COVID-19 impacted the festival? Like everybody else, no doubt, absolutely devastating in the first instance, and incredibly disorientating as well. When it hit, I was actually at the Adelaide Arts Festival at the tail end of the festival, and it was so bizarre to be there on the weekend before the restrictions started to be put in place, which was on the Monday, and to be there in the big fire gardens with thousands of people packed, jam-packed, and in the festival centre, seeing these incredible shows. And then, you know, on Monday, the world literally just changed. And those first couple of weeks, myself and my incredible team at Horizon, we were just, you know, we reprogrammed 3 times to try and adjust to the changing goalposts of the COVID-19 restrictions. And then there just came a moment where we just had to kind of stop and go, you know, it was like watching our festival kind of disintegrate through our fingers like sand. It was a very humbling moment, you know, very Buddhist moment of non-attachment, because we had literally just finished programming 6 months of work. We had, you know, 45 events, 300 odd artists, and we were just about to send out our contracts. So yeah, quite devastating. And one of the most heartbreaking moments for myself and Hannah was to actually have to tell these 300 odd artists that we didn't think that we had a gig for them later on in the year. But then, of course, it afforded this moment, the grand pause as it's been called, to just take a moment to stop and reflect and to go, okay, what next? And, you know, like all the other festivals in Australia, we essentially had 3 options. We had the option to cancel, we had the option to go online, or we had the option to kind of hold, pray to the festival gods and, you know, come up with a plan A, B, and C and potentially modify. And we decided to go with option 2, the online option, for a number of different reasons, which I can talk about. I might just leave it there, but talk about why we made that decision to go to an online festival. But essentially it was because we came back to what were our values and our identity as a festival, and that helped us make a decision about how we were going to move forward. Yeah.
Awesome. And Lincoln, to you, tell us a bit about Yonder and other events that you do around Southeast Queensland, and some of the impacts that have been faced by you, particularly as an independent producer of events.
Sure. So I guess I'll focus on Yonder Festival for this discussion, as it's the most kind of connected to festivals. But there's also the Brisbane Street Art Festival that is running at the moment in altered form. But Yonder is a multi-arts 3-day camping festival held on Cubby Cubby country, Sunshine Coast in the Gympie region. So about 2,000 people, broad program of mostly young and emerging artists. So we had about 50 bands play last year. And we kind of fit in the timing where we managed to go ahead last year, and we're now in the process of figuring out how we go ahead this year. So working on COVID safe plan and the extra layers of compliance that are in play.
Excellent, thank you. The next question I had for you guys is new ways of working and presenting. So how are you responding? And I know certainly, Lynn, for you, Horizon, you've just started to indicate that has moved essentially what was a 10-day festival into a 3-month online program. So perhaps that's a good one for you to kick off with. So what have been some of the new ways you've responded and presenting work, and how is that going?
Yeah. Okay, so we made the decision to move online, partly because, well, we realized that for us, it was essential that we keep going, because we felt so privileged and grateful to still be in work when so many weren't. And that's thanks to us being housed out of the Sunshine Coast Council, which has been incredibly supportive of our team. So we felt the responsibility to push forward, and being a festival in the second half of the year, not the first half of the year, that was actually an option for us. We had to decide between holding and waiting or going online, but we decided to go online, and a number of reasons. So first and foremost, to support our local arts community, because we could see it just decimating the arts sector. And, you know, we have a remit to support our local community, and we wanted to give them work and give them work now. So that was one of the reasons that we pulled the whole festival forward, so that we could give the work now rather than later in the year. And we reformatted to this 3-month rolling program because we needed to find a way to be responsive, to be nimble to the changing circumstances. And so we decided to launch on the 1st of every month, and then we could change the program as we went forward, which has worked really well. It's nearly sent my marketing team to nervous breakdown. They've been incredible. But yeah, it has actually worked brilliantly. And yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges for us was, you know, how do we move online? And for me, I just a little caveat to say that it was, like, for me, so destabilizing because, you know, anyone who knows me well knows I'm an absolute technophobe. My history is in live performance, physical theatre, immersive work. So to work digitally was just a massive learning curve for me personally, not so much for my team. But also very exciting to work in new ways. But the challenge was continuity. Okay, so how do we move a festival online and still maintain what is the essence of Horizon? And for us as a placemaking festival, you know, how do we celebrate place? Both the incredible locations that we're lucky enough to live in on the Sunshine Coast and work in, but also the connection to country through our First Nations program. And we were also going, okay, so we're a multi-arts festival, so we need to make sure that we're working across all of the different art forms in our New Look Festival. We had to, you know, find a way to continue to provide a site for connection and engagement, because community engagement is so important to Horizon, and a space to challenge, investigate, and reflect these extraordinary times that we were all going through. We have a little mantra at Horizon, which we see as our mission, which is to delight, disrupt, and to connect. So we had to make sure that with this New Look Online Festival, we were doing all 3 things. So yeah, it was a lot of big changes in a very short amount of time. And but you know, as with all crises, an incredible opportunity. And I think once we had that structure in place and we decided, okay, we're going to go with this, we're going to pull the whole festival forward. We're going to go with a 3-month rolling festival, you know, very ambitious and very different to what we've done before. But once we had that structure in place, it allowed us to start to, you know, find the freedom again. And we also we didn't throw out our old kind of more traditional tags of family and music and theatre, but we decided to kind of create these 4 strands that are speaking more directly to our values as a festival and what we see as our identity. So we have the open air strand, which is celebrating place, you know, because we were all stuck indoors at that point. So we were like, how do we celebrate the gorgeous location and connection to country? So we came up with these 3 outdoor music events celebrating our local, amazing international local artists based here on the coast, and employing a beautiful filmmaker, Nick Morley, to film these 3 concerts. So that was the first one, open air. The second one, homegrown, to do a call out, like so many people are currently doing, to our artists, and give them the power and say, what do you want to say at this point in time? How do you want to reflect 2020 to the world? And then the third one was words and ideas. So finding that space for discussion and reflection and debate. And then finally, Horizon Rewind, our 4th strand, which is a little bit of a nostalgic look back to some of our most loved events over the last 5 years. And we invited the artists who had created them to come back and work with us to create a series of videos to celebrate those events. So they're some of the quite significant changes that we've made over the last 4 months.
Great. And I know in terms of how it's going, I know the other day when I spoke to you, you said you'd had like thousands and thousands of people attend the first month's events online.
Thanks for reminding me, Katie. One of the amazing gifts of the online program we've discovered is that We've, hugely grown our audience base. The reach has been phenomenal. So I think last year in our festival, we had 35,000 audience, which we were really happy with for a young festival. In our first month alone, we had 20,000 audience, and we had 9,000 for just one event alone, Katie Noonan and Louise King's open air concert. And because we've housed all of our events on our website, people will be able to continue to engage for the next, the whole 3 months. So we expect those numbers to continue to rise. So such a brilliant exercise in getting the word out there about, the amazing stuff that Horizon and our whole team are doing.
Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? And I'm keen to talk about that idea of growing audiences in this period when we're accessing different types of folks who might not have otherwise connected to us. I really loved that you talked about that idea of keeping going and the responsibility that you have to artists. And I know that certainly that was something that I felt very strongly through this period. And Amanda, I know at Woodford, in terms of that, you guys also were some of the first, I think, to be really responsive, to keep going and have responsibility to your artists. You actually scheduled a whole range of gigs and events that you produced as part of a kind of program, not necessarily connected to the festival, but as a way in which to support artists who are part of your program. Did you want to talk a bit about that or anything else in terms of, how you've responded to the crisis and some things that you might have tried?
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Katie. The first thing we did was we actually put the planting festival, like the series of, we put together Woodford Live, which was artists performing every night. It's between 6 and 6:30, and broadcast obviously online, just using the basic platform of Facebook. But we were able to move very swiftly and get that up within a week of the COVID-19 announcement. And we basically put all of the artists who we had just been about to sign contracts with for the planting festival. So that whole series, first series, was every artist, and with the goal of making sure that that each of those artists got at least a minimum amount of $600 as a contract fee. So that was the first thing for us to do, and to move very fast, and while it was in everyone's thought. So that was great to be able to do that, and probably just from what we'd been doing with live broadcasts from Woodfordia during the Woodford Folk Festival, we were able to move into that space fairly quickly. So that was excellent. But we certainly knew that was just an initial reaction, and not something, wherever that platform's going to go, it's going to need to innovate and not just be how it's been used previously. I think that, one of the real shocks that has come is just the amount of planning and replanning for our events. And I'm sure this is with everyone. And, Lynne, you've just touched on that before, but like the number of variations that we've gone through about what the Woodford Folk Festival could look back. We've gone through, an 80% scaled back, a 70% scale back, a 60, a 40, a 30. And it's like, it's actually ravish, it's quite destructive, like pulling this apart. And then you're back to that creating, and you're actually putting it back together again, and then in smaller form or in different forms. So it's been, when you talk about Buddhism, it's been a very much a let go of process, and then a rebuilding process. So it's certainly been a stretch. One thing is, we're very fortunate that our team, that we were able to, keep the team going with that JobKeeper, so we could be reimagining and looking that, but also just helping to get the grass cut of the 500 acres. We put together a team of land volunteers that have been out doing a few days a week and helping out with that. And it's great. There's nothing better than to, get onto Woodfordia and have a walk around and get back with the animals and nature. And it reminds us about, why we're all doing this. So the reimagining, we're still at the moment in that. We're not far off making a final announcement. We're getting pretty close. We've been thinking about a different type of offering. So I suppose if you think of Woodford as being this, Woodford Folk Festival as being kind of this really deeply layered, intense week, instead of maybe that intensity and that size happening for that shorter period, how can we do something over a longer period? But for us, we're trying to look at something where we can still bring the community back together. At its core, Woodfordia and Woodford is a community celebration model. And whilst we have the land and the ability to imagine different ways, and because of its vastness, we're really trying to keep the option of being able to have a come together in person. So we're working with our medical team and with Queensland Health and with the wealth of industry protocol plans that have been done to date to see what we can do in that space and what we can do, because obviously we don't know what next year is going to look like as well. So, what we can do now and what we can do in the early part of next year. So we're really taking the time to try and get something that we think is an appropriate response, something also that obviously, everyone has been financially impacted with this as well as socially. And, we have to imagine where people are at and what they can afford to do. So that is very much front and centre of our minds. But we very much want to give the opportunity for artists to be able to play to a live audience. And so we're working to craft up something, and we've sent a survey out. So for those of you that aren't on our database or don't know about it, if you jump on our website, there should be on our Facebook site, there should be a link to our survey on there. And we'd love people's feedback on what our thinking is for this kind of like understated experience we're calling Bush Week. I'll leave it at that, Katie.
Great. And Lincoln, finally to you, you too, I think, were really quick to consider. So obviously Yonder was due to happen later this year, but Brisbane Street Art Festival, which you also organise, I know that you, again, kind of really had to think about how to do that. And again, had that at the core, that responsibility to your artists, wanted to keep going, but also that sense of that community. So that particularly within that community, how could you continue to support those artists, get that work out there? And there were some interesting ways that you did that. Do you want to talk to us a bit about that?
Sure. So our team works across Yonder and the Brisbane Street Art Festival, as well as Super Ordinary. It's like a new art space in the Brisbane CBD. So we kind of, there are multiple festivals, but the same team, we work across all of them. And the Brisbane Street Art Festival was due to run the first 2 weeks of May, which was obviously right in the middle of some of the worst of the shutdown. So we had to cancel pretty much the entire program, but half of that festival is installing large-scale public artwork, which we realised that we could still do. So we went ahead with painting a number of murals with Queensland Health giving us the go-ahead to do that, which meant that the artists were still in work and our team was still managing the logistics of that side of things. So we kind of kept busy doing that. And a lot of the projects couldn't happen because the artists were either interstate or international. So those projects, we still want to achieve them, but they're going to be spread out through the entire year now. And some of the international projects will happen whenever the international borders open again next year. In the downtime, we were kind of pretty bored. A lot of us were on JobKeeper, so we adapted with a few things. We also jumped online and started a live streaming program through the venue in the city, Super Ordinary. And one of the projects we're doing now is a monthly arts late show for Brisbane, where it's kind of like a typical late show format, where we have the event space in the venue has been converted to a studio, and we have a feature band, a number of interviews and things, so you can check it out online, super late. So I guess we're just, a pretty resilient team. We're used to having a lot of challenges in the way of running a small festival, but being small, we're generally more, we can respond pretty quickly. And in our case for Yonder, we decided not to put too much work into the festival this year until we knew what we could do. So only now, with the COVID safe plans being released and a bit of a pathway laid out to us, we're starting to put that work in. And the festival itself is going to adapt quite a lot in terms of layout, where we have a very large site for Yonder, which means we can spread out and experiment with different ways of doing things. Excellent.
So I'm interested, you've all started thinking about what this means for your own festivals. I suppose given the recent events in Melbourne and, you know, they're looking at closing things back down again down there, do any of you have kind of any sense about what this means for festivals, for the future of festivals and events generally, both locally, nationally and internationally? Any kind of thoughts about that at the moment? What are going to be those ongoing impacts? Lynne?
Yeah, I'll kick off. I've been thinking a lot, as I'm sure everyone has, about the what next, and talking to other festival directors constantly about 2021 and our festivals for next year and what's going to be possible and, you know, where we're moving. And obviously, you know, health and safety regulations and risk management have to come to the fore. But I don't think that that means that, you know, initially some people were like, you know, does that mean your programming is going to be really compromised? Is it going to get really conservative? But that's not at all the sense that I'm getting. All the directors that I'm talking to are, you know, again, it comes back to this structure and freedom idea. Like once we have a structure as artists, you know, then we innovate from there. That's where we find our freedom. So you just have to look at, you know, what Sydney Festival and Darwin Festival, their decision to go local and homegrown and to celebrate, you know, the artists that we have here in Australia. Melbourne Festivals, the Rising Festival, their announcement, you know, they're rethinking old models and that amazing commitment to take the $2 million and to do this call out to festivals. And I think their wording was they didn't want traditional works, they wanted artistic experiences, rituals and ceremonies that use the city as the stage. I was like, yes. So I think we're going to see a lot more site-specific work, a lot more outdoor work, a kind of a redistribution, potentially the power going back to the artists rather than, you know, it being here with the festival organisers to actually, so, you know, readdress that balance. I think next year is going to be, you know, festivals are going to be a space for reconnection, rejuvenation and rejoicing. And by that, I mean reconnection, kind of finding ways to come back to our communities, our neighbourhoods. I love the, you know, Brisbane Festival's cul-de-sac concerts. I've already put my hand up for my street. Rejuvenation, you know, that's about us as artists acknowledging our role in healing, helping people find meaning and heal from this quite, you know, traumatic, for many people, traumatic year. And to rejoice, you know, I was talking to John Kotsis and he said, God damn, everyone's going to need a big party next year. So, you know, I think there'll be a lot of celebration happening. And I think we'll see we'll see more intimate performances. We'll definitely see, I hope we'll see a greater focus on First Nations work and our platforms as a platform for BIPOC voices after the Black Lives Matter. I mean, the great pause aspect of what's happened has allowed us all to, you know, to really come back to what are our values and take a bit more time to get off the treadmill and go, okay, you know, of course we support these things. How can we do better? How can we, you know, find mechanisms to better, you know, let these voices be heard? So, you know, I'm definitely a glass half full girl, and I'm really excited to see the what next in terms of the future.
Great answer, thank you. Lincoln or Amanda, any further thoughts for you guys on that? What do you think it means for everybody else? Where are we moving to? What's the future?
Well, I mean, I'm a bit like Lynne in the sense of that, you know, where the future is going to be a bright place because of the incredible people in the arts and events industries that are going to make it that way, and the artists. I feel like, you know, all of us have been on a treadmill for a long time, and creatively within the spaces that we work at, you know, rewarding and nurturing, but certainly the influx of work and the influx of emails and the influx of everything that needs to get done, it really is been a very busy pace of late. And COVID-19's interrupted that, and we all have to take this opportunity and make something of it that has a long-lasting impact on us as a humanity. We can all do better. And I think that people, we're up to rising to this challenge, and I think the key is going to be to maintain a peacefulness moving forward as well, to take stock and take the good things out of this pause, but take them with us into the future and don't just have them for this moment. So I think it's exciting. I'm concerned about contracts for artists moving forward. I'm concerned that, already the robustness around their employment and ongoing employment and guarantees about roles. I mean, people's contracts were just completely cancelled. So just looking at the response can't just be to put clauses in all artists' contracts that, it's you'll get cancelled at this stage. So we need to be very sensitive to that moving forward, and also just sensitive to that, spontaneously and creativity. I agree with you, Lynn, about that, freedom once you find out what the structures are, but we've also got to, make sure we can push around and make sure the structures are fluid enough that there is a great enough freedom within there. But I think I'm very positive about the future, and very positive, just hearing what Horizon and what Yoda are doing, and knowing what the other great work that's getting done out there with festivals. It will be an exciting future.
And Lincoln, anything for you from that perspective in terms of?
I mean, I agree with everything Lynn and Amanda are saying there as well. Our interactions with artists and audiences at the moment, I mean, it was pretty bleak 2 months ago, but now everyone is incredibly positive, and it's almost like it's a chance to build things in a different way. Like we're getting outside of some of the structures we have been in, and we're kind of forced to innovate in some ways. Our team are constantly throwing around different concepts of how we can, interact in this space and bring people together in different ways, and working with new technology. I think one of the big things which will be, make a big difference will be how compliance and government responds and makes allowances. I know with us, it's all, every year we do a project, it's always our biggest challenge is some kind of compliance or legislative or some kind of government or council influence on what we do. We just want to put a show on, but there's so many boxes to tick. And at the moment, the more freedoms that are given and more allowances within reason, the more that the sector can get back on their feet from our emerging space mostly.
That's great. I'm really interested in that idea of innovation, particularly, and about whether, the next question I had was kind of around what does this new state of festivals or events mean for artists, but also mean for audiences and communities? And we started to talk about this a little bit before around that idea of access to new audiences or different audiences that we might not have accessed before, even if that might be international. It could be also really hyper local. So those things that happen when you have an event happening in a cul-de-sac at the end of your street, that kind of accidental interaction with arts and culture that maybe we kind of miss, if we're kind of all pushing to those large gigs. So I'm interested, I suppose, in, how do artists respond to this new, it's probably a two-pronged question, sorry. Feel free to answer however you like. How do artists respond or engage in this new type of festival or event? And also, what does this mean to communities and their access to arts and culture? Anybody?
Yeah, I can go. I think it's I can only really speak from our organisation, but it's once again trying to put that framework together. And we've been talking with a few artists about different ways that they might be able to, think of maybe more a season within it, within Woodford, rather than a show. So looking at things like that. I think, I think it's a bit early for us to say too much at the moment just on how they're going to engage, but we are going to be looking for, continue to look for opportunities for co-creation, continue to look for opportunities for artists to be able to bring new work. Initially, probably we'll be talking to a lot of, existing Woodford audiences, but as it evolves, and I think as other festivals reach out to new audiences. Great, Lynn, to hear that take up of the first month with Horizon. But at the end of the day, as each festival's broadening their audience, that's only going to benefit everyone. I mean, at the end of the day, like we've always said, like the TV is the actual competitor at the end of the day, and it's what we're all working towards to get people away from that and actually have those real experiences. So as everyone's audience footprint grows larger, that only benefits the outcome of us all collectively, and it only improves the impact that that the arts are having on, and musicians and artists are having on people's lives. So I think it's exciting looking at a larger audience in the future, maybe with different events and smaller scales offering, but a broader audience that we're talking with.
Yeah, great. Lynn or Lincoln, anything to add to that? You don't have to if you don't have anything else, but you're welcome to join in.
One thing that we've been, experimenting with is we jumped on the live streaming bandwagon, and there's a platform called Twitch, which is like the world's largest streaming platform, and it became massive through video gaming. So most 99% of what is streamed on that is video games, and that's a incredible amount of streamed hours goes through that. We got in touch with them. They provided some support to us because they're trying to develop the arts side, so the non-video gaming stuff. They sent us some camera gear, like a backpack with a camera on it, and some support through featuring our streams to get to a wider audience. So we've kind of just started, it's not hard for us just to add a camera to everything we do now. And so we've just started to stream everything on top of what we do normally. Like, so much of what we do is experiential. It's about the physical presence of being in a place with an art form and an audience and an artist, but figuring out how to add this online element is becoming something for us. So the technology is there and it's very easy to use, and it seems that there is actually it's a strange thing, because like last night we did the show, we had a number of people from Brisbane clearly who know people and are watching it, but then when Twitch features us, we get thousands of viewers from all over the world. So it's this whole other audience we never thought we'd ever reach, but now we are, and that is now growing more. So we're just going to start continuing to stream and I guess reaching a wide audience on the side of doing what we're doing as like a secondary thing.
Yeah, I might throw to you specifically around, I saw a couple of questions that have come through about that idea of, how streaming, and do you continue that online work into what you're doing in the future, even if restrictions ease in some way?
Yeah.
And also a question about how do you convince an older audience they should go online? Have you got any kind of, are you getting a sense that there's a variety of people accessing your content online? Will people continue to want to do that, do you think? And are you planning to include that moving forward?
Yeah, well, I'll take the first part first, the first part of the question first. I think we've just begun that discussion because we're still in the midst of our festival. So we're literally halfway through. So we're kind of completely absorbed in delivery mode still. But I think now that we're starting to see some of the positive, like incredible positives from moving online in terms of accessibility and being able to include national and international artists that we may not have been able to afford to work with before. I think that there will continue to be a mix of live and online content moving forward. And yeah, so definitely I would say for sure something. I don't know how much or what exactly. But for example, just we have this wonderful symposium planned for next month, Field Trip, which is a symposium that's celebrating the juncture of art and science and technology. We've got these incredible experts coming in from all over the country to speak. So that's something we could never have afforded to actually do, but we're seeing that it actually works wonderfully online. So those kinds of events, I think, will definitely continue to host online. The second part of the question, I'm hoping you're not asking me that, Katie, because I'm older and a technophobe, but how do we encourage our older audiences? One of my best friends is Jude Pippin, the magnificent Jude Pippin, and, you know, actually, she's probably more technologically adept than I am, let's be honest. But, you know, increasingly encouraging people to come and try it. And I think it is partly educating people on how to use these digital platforms and to make them really user-friendly. And once they do it once, they actually tend to come back, revisit. So yeah, there's it's an education process as well.
I was absolutely not asking you because of that. I was just simply asking the questions in the chat. Look, I think that's really fantastic, and I love that idea of how are we looking at this as an opportunity. I think the arts is so interesting as a sector because I think we essentially are problem solvers. We do look at the world differently. We often are the first, we're front runners in so many things. And so it's interesting to think that in amongst all of this, we're trying to find ways to do things differently. And I too have found that we are accessing different audiences. We're trialing different things. So I love that idea. I guess the last question I had as part of my questions, and then we'll flick open to some Q&A with the other folks, was about how do we support you? So if there was kind of a couple of things you think, what do people who love your events and festivals, how do audiences, how do artists, how do councils, how do governments support you as in your events currently to kind of keep doing the great work you're doing during this process and beyond into a post-COVID kind of version of whatever it might be? Thoughts? Amanda, I think you're muted. Is she still muted or is it just me? We might go with Lincoln. Do you want to give us a thoughts about what support do you need? How do you get support at the moment?
Well, yeah, as I said before, I think the biggest challenge ongoing for us is always, I mean, for example, with Yonder, the council legislation around events is very complex and is in a bit of a mess. So if small events have a lot of trouble getting off the ground, so it takes months of lobbying to figure out how to go forward with, 3 or 4 different departments of that council. Whereas, it just takes one person within a council just to be like, okay, this event needs to go ahead, what needs to happen? And then they can just do the runaround for you. So it doesn't take months before you even get to start programming. So that's more of a government side of things. I guess for audiences, it's just buying tickets and showing up.
Yeah, absolutely. And particularly when we know, people are struggling themselves, that purchasing of tickets can, it's a hard thing to kind of sell at the moment. But I agree with you. I think if we're invested, we have to keep doing that as best we can. Lynne, any thoughts from you? What do you need? What is the need? What is the support you require?
Well, we can always take more funding, but I think it's about everybody embracing these new opportunities for change, the roaring change. Someone termed it. I love that term. So letting go of the fear and the need to return to a normal. We are never going home again. We are going into a new world. I love that incredible essay by Arundhati Roy. Did I get the pronunciation right there? the pandemic, the portal, the pandemic is a portal to this new world. And I've just lost the quote, but this idea that we will never be able to go back, that we are on the verge of entering a new world, and we need collectively to embrace that. The artists need to embrace new ways of working and models of making work, which doesn't mean they need to change their voices, but just to try new things. And audiences need to be willing to embrace, new ways of interacting and new models of art making, and potentially some really innovative new cross-fertilizations. I personally predict we're going to see some exciting cross-fertilizations between traditional art forms like music, theatre and dance, and things like the culinary arts, or, tourism, arts adventures, those kinds of things. So being willing to try things that they've never done before. And in terms of council, I mean, we're so lucky. The Sunshine Coast Council has been so supportive. I mean, you think about it, it's such a radical, ask for us to go, okay, we want to actually change the entire structure of our festival from a 10-day one later in the year to a 3-month one now. Is that okay? And for them to come back and go, yeah, we support you, go, which we did. So we're really lucky. And, of course we had the budgets were significantly cut, but we understood why. And we hope moving forward is that, government will continue and council will continue to, support us as we make the big changes that are necessary to step into this new world and to reflect this new world that we find ourselves in.
Right. Amanda, I think we might have got you back maybe. Can you?
Yes.
Great, there you are. Anything from you on that one?
Well, I think there's a lot of pressure on governments at the moment to respond to the arts industry and the tourism industry, two of the areas that are substantially hit. So I'm hoping that there might be, some sort of announcement about JobKeeper potentially extending for selected industries. So I don't, there's a lot that the government has done well so far, both in our state and federally, and I hope to see that continue. It was good to see the announcement by the state government recently on the arts and culture recovery package, and we're seeking funding to help us get through this so that we can retain a core staff that can put an event on similar to Woodford Folk Festival into the future. But as Lincoln said, how people can support it is really buying tickets, coming and being part of it, coming and supporting the event, supporting the artist by showing up. So if we can all do our bit that way, we can all get through this.
Yeah, absolutely. I just am conscious of time, but we've got a few more minutes. I saw my lovely friend Libby Harwood had made a good comment about how do we interact with audiences and get feedback. Libby, is there a question you want to have or a little bit of a chat you want to share with us about that?
Hello, everyone. I'm Libby Harwood, Kondamuka woman and artist. My experience. So I was about to launch a work at Next Wave Festival, and I was given the option, similar option to festivals. You said earlier, to just do what not produce a work, but I was like right at the very beginning of the pre-production period, and so I wasn't gonna stop. And I just kind of adapted, which was really good, and spent the whole of COVID in production mode. And I produced a series of films which are on my website currently at the moment. I'm probably going to take them down. Haven't made specific decisions around that, but I will want to show them in spaces in the future, so they won't be permanently there. But one of the things that came up for me about that was when you work in isolation anyway, and I worked intensively in isolation during COVID, and then you release the work online, it's a very different experience. And I was lucky because we could have 5 people over. So I had 5 people over, and then I didn't know if people saw it or didn't see it. The reactions to the work dribbled in across a few days, across a few weeks, and I really had to coax out that critical feedback that I really thrive off. And I still haven't exactly, I came up with an idea that I haven't really moved on, but it would have been good if it had been held by a festival or a body that could say, okay, we have a number of works, let's get the artists talking to each other and give each other feedback and watch each other's work, because I really missed that critical feedback that you get from exhibiting, as well as all the love and excitement and relief and all that stuff. But yeah, I think there's something that we can just be aware of when you're producing festivals.
Yeah, it's interesting. So that idea of that feedback loop, or how do we kind of give that commentary back to artists as part of their work? I know that we did a little watching party for something that we had, and people commented like in the chat like this, and it was actually one of the most. It was with young people watching other young people's work. Was one of the cutest things I've ever seen. The emoji kind of, the screen was just basically emojis, 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 and I was like in tears of hysteria and love for all of them. So I agree, we do still need that validation, and it is particularly, I think, for anyone that's I'm desperately missing hugs and connection and a bit of dance and a festival for sure. So any other questions? We've got a couple more times. We've got a bit more time. There's a couple, I think, online, or I can take some from the floor now.
I can say something if you like. Just
Yeah.
as an audience member, I guess. I'm not a producer or anything like that. I love festivals, theatre, all that kind of stuff. And it's just interesting, the whole interaction between online and all that kind of thing. And it's interesting. I never knew the Horizon Festival existed. So thank God it did go online. So now I know it exists. So it's interesting. I mean, as much as I love it live, I'm glad I'm seeing now Horizon. Found that's 3 months. I can say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that and watch that. So that's really cool. I guess the hardest thing for me, it's always been part of my life, and you buy tickets to things and you look forward to it. But it just has evolved so much. 1 minute you're going, the next minute it's cancelled, then it's going ahead. And I guess for producers and people who do the work, it must be just an absolute nightmare. So for me, I guess a lot of it now, I know things are coming up, but I don't want to get excited about anything. I guess that's the hardest thing for me at the moment now. Like, I've been to Yonder before. My husband's been involved with Yonder as a performer, so I guess we would love it to go ahead, but we're not getting excited in case it doesn't, but in a different way. And I think audience members have got to go with the flow a lot, which is going to be quite difficult if you're used to seeing it in one way. But it's lovely too, because I did the Woodford survey, which is great too. So I guess they're asking, what do we want to, which is really important as well. And I mean, the fact Woodford's going to be in a different way. I've only been twice and didn't stay the whole time, but I'm glad they're doing something. It sort of doesn't suit what we need, but I think it's lovely that they can still do something. It's very family, which is beautiful. For young kids, festivals are this. It doesn't have to be this. It can be something else. Like, I'm very late coming into festivals in my 40s. So, but, I just, it's just an interesting time all round. I mean, I'll continue to buy tickets, and I really, really want to so much. And it's not so much as, I know something I'm getting a refund for, which is lovely, but then I want to support as well. But I'm still very scared of getting anything, because I just think, and it doesn't happen. It's like, like even now my Queensland Ballet's gone for the year, another dance company. So many things have just, and I've got to remember, it's affecting everyone. You're right, it affects everybody in every way. But the thing, I have seen a lot more online, which is great. I'm doing things online. I never thought I'd be dancing in my living room doing a plie, but so it's been a really interesting time, and I really hope now that people support artists a lot more. I just think the government needed to step up. When there's crisis, who's there? The bushfires, classic example. The artists are there. Now it's time to support the artists back, and if it's smaller, well, maybe that is a good thing. And maybe audience members, I hope my cat just jacked the table. So yeah, it's been an interesting time. So I'm glad I've cut, and to have this forum's been really great, just to see what is out there and what we can do. And I'll rally the troops and continue to support all these festivals. So
Yeah, I think it's an experience that many of us are going through, both as audiences and as producers. It is a trying time, and actually, that's probably an interesting question, a whole other conversation about mental health and well-being and how everybody's going in the sector. To be honest, we could probably, that can of worms might take a little while to unpack, so maybe we'll
I
leave
feel
that.
for Melbourne.
But I think it's definitely been a lot. I had a question actually from Tony Wills, who I wanted to throw to. Tony, for those of you who don't know, fantastic producer and maker on the Sunshine Coast, works for Anywhere Festival as well as a bunch of others, and had a question about, Tony, do you just want to ask your own question about making money online,
Yeah.
basically?
Hi, everybody. How you going? So as Katie said, I work as a creative producer for the Anywhere Festival, but I also work for other festivals, including Horizon, producing their Bunker Spoken Word series. And I suppose I'm coming from, because I work with a lot of independent artists and I'm also an independent producer, I'm interested in how I think one of the biggest challenges we have for independent artists is how to get audiences to pay for online experiences. You know, that's been a real challenge for us in the independent, in the bunker work that we do, because, you know, Horizon Festival has funding behind it and therefore can provide these experiences for free. I think for independents, it becomes a lot harder, especially when there's added costs with live streaming or, you know, to get sort of really good quality live streaming events happening. So I'd be really interested to hear about people's thoughts on how we can get audiences to pay for online stuff, especially when the presumption is that everything happens for free, and how major festivals can also assist the independents to I don't know, school audiences perhaps by not just giving everything away.
I can, we're trying to figure that out at the moment. I think it's something that's going to be integral now, and it's possible, you know, as in video gamers make money by streaming online. And I think looking at that, what they've done and how they succeeded with that might be a way for the arts to kind of respond. And it's two ways. One is a subscription. So, you know, if you follow an artist or a festival or an organization, and you pay a monthly fee, and they provide just content, you know, and content you can only access if you're subscribed. The other, particularly for artists, is like a similar format, but it's there's a few, I can't think of the big one, but there's a few platforms online where you basically sign up to support an artist. So you subscribe to them as an artist and you provide $5 a month or more. You know, Jaguar Jones, Dina Lynch is an example, who's done it really well. Her platform and the monthly income she takes in from fans just trying to support her is working for her quite well. So I think there is some opportunities there.
Can I just ask whether there's some kind of capacity, this is probably more directed towards Katie, about upskilling artists on how to track online audience engagement? Like that might be one thing, but also about getting some insights from these people that have been successful with things like Patreon or, you know, Jaguar Jones, finding out like directly from these independent artists how they've done it and whether that's something that might be a workshop or just an interesting idea.
Sure, we can. I'll say yes.
Yes,
Yep.
yes, always say yes, babe.
I do always say yes, don't I? And then I get myself in trouble because I've said yes to too many bloody things. Yes, I reckon that's a great idea. Sure. Let's make it a topic.
Can I make an observation? And that is to have a look at some of the other areas, the non-arts, non-festival areas. Have a look at what all those charities who used to put on big charity nights to raise money, and there were the major fundraisers for the year. And a lot of those are now doing that. They're doing it online, but then they're sending boxes full of food and drinks and things out. So when people join them online, they open up their boxes and they take part in the event in their homes or in small groups, where all the entertainment, all of the fundraising, raffles and all the things they do are online, but they've got their own little party packages which are arising. there and have a look at what the incredible success. Has anyone come across cheese therapy? No, have a look up cheese therapy. It's been a huge success. They've just actually had to open it was a little Sunshine Coast activity, and they've opened up a big factory warehouse to cope with the needs. What did they look at? They looked at all the little independent cheesemakers throughout Australia, and they now package those up into boxes, and they're selling them at $80 a box. And they're actually keeping these little independent cheesemakers in business. You know, they're helping them through all of these tough times. So there are some examples of people creatively finding ways to help independents, but also help marry in that online versus in-person experience that you can have.
I love that the one who can't eat dairy knew about the cheese boxes. I don't know what that says about me, but I've seen those and I was all about them, but I can eat none of it. So interesting. Nonetheless, on that note, I've been told I have to wrap up. We could have this chat for ages and I would encourage you to do so. It has been excellent to have all of you together. Thank you to my amazing panel of guests, Lynne, Lincoln and Amanda. And thanks as well to Lyndon, who welcomed us today. Thanks to our hosts, Feral Arts, Arts Front, for your support. I'm Katie from Creative Arts Alliance. I will commit to following up with you, Tony, on that workshop. And perhaps we can do another session around this. Again, there's been a lot of interest in festivals, so perhaps we might look to stage another conversation or a version of this. Please check out the links online, and that's probably all, I think. Is it, Norm, Sarah? Am I meant to say anything else? No, that's it. Hang on for a yarn if you want to offline.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.